Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. Thank you for joining us, and for this week's episode, I'm going to be speaking to Extinction Rebellion. The Shrewsbury branch are going to pop in and have a chat with me. I did say a while ago that I wanted to speak to these guys about, let's talk about what you are trying to tell us. What's the message you're trying to communicate? They've been doing protests up and down the country, closing up bridges and lying down in banks and things like that. And I was kind of like, well, let's talk about what you guys need to say. So they came in and it was a really nice interview. I was a bit worried, I'm not going to lie, because it's not everybody's cup of tea. This whole thing, but it's really important, and it's important to me, that everybody gets to grip with what's going on with climate change, because it's not a myth. It's going to affect us all, and it's something, an important point that we all need to get a grip of, and that's what Extinction Rebellion are trying to do. It was a really insightful interview, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for those guys for coming to join me. They told me to mention to you guys that they do have a meeting. We mentioned it on the interview, but I think they gave the wrong time or something, so I've had to edit that out. But here it is. The Shrewsbury Extinction Rebellion meeting will be on the 11th of September between 7 and 9 p.m. at the Unison Club at Abbey Foregate. So if you're interested in going, message them on their Facebook. They've got an XR Shrewsbury Facebook page. You can message them there, or, just turn up. I'm sure it'd be very insightful. So, their numbers are growing all the time. There's lots of people joining forces with these guys, and it'd be great to check out. So thank you again to those guys. We have got so much going on this month, and it never goes to plan, doesn't it? When you're doing these things, obviously with the trip to Ireland that you guys have seen on my social media, I had to pack my bags and just go. I finished recording an episode of a podcast at 9:30 in the evening, and then by 8 o'clock the next morning, I was on a ferry to Ireland, and it was a very impromptu kind of planned thing, and so it threw everything in the air as far as podcast planning was concerned. But I have caught up. And I've already got lots planned this month. I'm going to be speaking to Sarah Hopper from the Ferndale B&B. I wanted to get a glimpse into, a very popular place to stay in Shrewsbury during the crazy season. So I was like, this crazy spell you're going through, would you mind if I interrupted you for an hour or so we can talk on a podcast? And that's what we're going to do. So that's that one. I'm also going to be speaking to Joe from the Shrewsbury Folk Festival this week. And we have the flower show coming on Friday, the 9th, up to Saturday, the 10th. That's really exciting. I can't wait to get to that. I'm gonna go there, walk around with a microphone, speak to people. Hi, are you enjoying the flower show? Speak to me for my podcast. That's what I'm going to be doing. And then hopefully at the end of the month, I'm going to sit down and do a flower show recap. What was it all about? What did I enjoy? What was great about it? I also have spoke to my boy Simon Bell. You remember from episode 1. We are actually trying to organise a really special interview this month, so that will be a bit of a bonus episode if we can get it together. But for this week, I would like you guys to sit down, relax, and enjoy this episode. Speaking to Extinction Rebellion, going with an open mind. If one of the messages I mentioned through this is, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. So go in with an open mind, listen to what they have to say, and decide afterwards. Because a lot of what they're saying is serious. Makes sense, and we need to wake up and smell the coffee because there's certain things that need to be changed. And this podcast will give you an insight into that. So thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy this episode. For now, peace out. Today I'm sat with two representatives from Extinction Rebellion. Could I get your names first of all? So you're
Anna Morris.
You're Anna Morris. And
Richard Davies.
Richard Davies. Fantastic. Thank you for joining me on the Biscuit. I've decided a while ago I think it was after I saw the die-in? Davies? Oh, I put Morrison, sorry.
That was my granddad, Richard Morris.
Yeah. He actually said, my name is Richard Davies, and I wrote Richard Morris, because this is the way my mind is working today. I'm not quite with it. Yeah, after you guys, I saw the thing at the Barclays Bank, where you kind of pretended to die on the floor.
We did.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah. I was like, okay, so there's lots of the protests. I don't want to sound like I'm kind of running you guys down, because I'm really not, okay? But like, the protests and things like that they're absolutely spectacular. And, for us bystanders, they're spectacular to see. But there's I'd like to add a bit of context to that. Like, what is the message that you guys are trying to get? I mean, we get the broad idea of it. Climate change is we're heading to, whatever you destruction. Yeah, that's what. So let's talk about ways we can kind of help things.
So the events like the die-in and other things we're doing, they are deliberately attention grabbing, and it's to raise the point really that we are reaching crisis point. Things need to be turned around very rapidly. So we want the government to pay attention, treat it like the crisis that it is. Barclays Bank, for example, are a big investor in fossil fuels. So one of the big messages of Extinction Rebellion is that business as usual is not an option. So carrying on the way we are and making small tinkering at the edges, putting solar panels on roofs and making small personal changes, that's all great and everything helps. But actually the scale of the crisis that we're looking at and the speed that things are changing, we need something way, way bigger than that. So it's sort of deliberately attention grabbing to make the point. We need the government to make big legally binding policies
and
starting now.
From the 15th of April, the first big event in London, I think the kind of response of the media and the visibility of this issue across the piece has been dramatically different. So I think that has been incredibly effective, and that's also kind of come at a time when there's been significant climate-related weird stuff going on weather-wise, and obviously today we're in Whaley Bridge.
Last week, heat waves where trains were cancelled because the lines were buckling. We're seeing the real effects right here and right now.
Yeah.
Of course, individual weather effects. We've had heat waves in the past. There's been floods in the past, but the increasing frequency and the fact that as a global pattern, it's all increasing and getting more severe, and we're heading.
Like your Facebook group it shares some of the most catastrophic and heartbreaking sort of stories. Like you see, there's one picture of it. I don't know where it was in the world, but it was a reservoir, not a reservoir. It was an estuary, and it was just absolutely jam packed full of just trash, just floating, and like there's kids picking stuff out the river, and it's like we're just ignoring what's going on around the world, and say like, oh yeah, it's great. Let's change everything in London and Cardiff and Edinburgh and things like that. But what's going on in other countries in the world? How can we make a stance that reflects everything that's going on in the world? What do we do?
XR has made real progress in terms of other places starting groups. So we're dozens of countries. I don't have the exact number, but Solomon Islands to Australia, Spain to South Africa, USA and India all have XR groups now, all doing stuff. And many of the rebellions now are international in nature. All of this started here in the UK, so XR itself began here. So I think we can be really proud of that. But I think we're seeing things change very rapidly, and we've obviously had ecological and environmental groups for many years, Friends of the Earth.
Well, people are paying attention to you, and like the things like the die-in and things like you were saying, grab attention, but that's what it's doing. And now you're on the world famous Shrewsbury Biscuit. So it's working, and people are paying attention. But is it going fast enough for you guys?
No, and that's why we're not stopping. Job's not done, and we're really only just beginning. I think. One of Extinction Rebellion's messages is one of their key goals is to ask the media to tell the truth, the government and the media. And I think that we're actually making real inroads with that. The narrative in the media, the fact that climate crisis is in the news pretty much every day. Extreme weather events are now being linked to climate crisis as a global pattern, rather than just saying, oh, isn't it nice that everybody's on the beach in April or whatever. We're starting to see a much clearer narrative that this isn't all good news, and that rapid action is needed. So I think we are making progress on the changing the public conversation and changing the conversation at policy level as well. Not enough is happening, and we still need to push harder, but we are starting to see people starting to wake up and take notice.
I mean, I saw a stat this morning that 71% of people feel like climate change is a more important subject to be talking about than Brexit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a peach, right? That's a peach because
That's a good number.
Where is all the where's all the news stories? Where is it all? All these people want things to happen, but when they're not talking about it in the press, which is what you were saying, right?
People think short term, and I guess that's why we've got in the situation that we're in. Policymakers and scientists have known about the climate crisis we are heading towards for a really, really long time, and it's really the failure of political action over the last couple of decades that's got us in the situation that we're in now. So it is an emergency, and they now need to step up and make rapid action because of the failure to do it for so long.
I mean, I remember I left school in 2002, something like that. They were talking about climate change back then, and up until about 5 years ago, it was all. This microphone's driving me crazy. It's always been like a real big talking point. It's like think global.
We're just talking. The action wasn't there.
Yeah,
and now we're at a point where we need massive action because we've left it so late. So the analogy that I use is that normally on a work day you need to leave the house at 8. You set the alarm for 7, and you have time to do all your normal routines. Well, we've woken up at 10 to 8, and we've still got to leave the house at 8. So we're going to have to forget our normal way of thinking, forget our usual routines, forego the shower, get a coffee on the way to work. We've still got to leave the house at 8 in order to solve this problem. So, and it can be done. It has to be done.
But I feel like the thing that's kind of derailed it a little bit is these climate change deniers. I don't want to say the T word at all.
You said the B word.
I said the B word. I don't want to say the T word. But that guy over there, he's kind of denying that anything's going on. That there's no evidence to support climate change. Where does he get the right to say things like this? Where does that come from?
You just have to follow. You just have to think about the reasons. Why is he saying that? What are his vested interests? And he's got a lot of financial interests, and he represents people with a lot of financial interests in not doing anything about it. Yeah. We're not gaining anything personal from being in XR. Most people in XR, are normal people doing normal jobs. We haven't got any financial interest in turning this around. We just want a planet for our kids to grow up on.
Yeah,
so it's all about looking at what their motivations are for saying the things that they're saying, I guess.
There's a group on Facebook. I saw this famous artist, and he draws like these amazing pictures of like to represent the failure in this sort of thing and the destruction of the earth and things like that. And it's like there's a guy with a gas mask on, and he's breathing in the fumes from a plant to try and survive while he's surrounded by garbage. And it's like at this point you realise that you can't eat money, and it always reminds me of WALL-E, that movie WALL-E.
Yeah, WALL-E, and the Dr. Zeus one as well.
Yeah.
I forgot. Oh, it'll come back to me in a minute. Yeah, it's another good analogy.
The Lorax.
Yeah, the Lorax.
That's it. Yeah. We've got to stem it somehow. And is there anything that you guys have thought of? Anything like say tomorrow, Boris and Mr. T suddenly turn around. Okay, Extinction Rebellion. You got full reins. What do we do? What do we do from there? I know that's a really hard question to ask. It's quite a...
Say the question again, because actually my brain went off on. Don't call him Mr. T. That's like giving him kudos way more than he deserves.
Mr. T.
What was the question again?
So say Extinction Rebellion get given full control on how we can make the changes from tomorrow. Bam, let's go. What do we do? I mean, it's a really packed question there because there's a lot to talk about, but what would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we have to start with less. So fundamentally, we live in really rubbish buildings. In this nation, there are 22 million homes that people live in that waste dramatic amounts of energy. So they're expensive to heat, and the kind of electricity use in those places is crazy. So we can't build our way in terms of renewables out of this. So we need to kind of put a lid on essentially the way we're using energy in our homes initially, and that would create lots of jobs. It's economically a vibrant thing to do. Because when you go back to talk about what Trump's supporting, the alternative is actually really beautiful. I don't know if you've been in an electric car, or have lived in a kind of passive house, or been in super efficient buildings, or kind of LED lighting or photovoltaics. All of these technologies are brilliant. So it's about radical policies to actually enact all of that stuff as quickly as possible. Obviously, Shrewsbury really struggles with air pollution. Transport's a real issue. So thinking about how we would change the system. So it's about thinking about the policies that are going to deliver that radical change. And all of those alternatives are beautiful and lovely.
There's all sorts of different ways that it can be tackled, and one of the things that Extinction Rebellion promotes is that we as members of Extinction Rebellion don't hold all the answers and don't think it should all be up to us. What we think the government needs to do, and quickly, is to set up a citizens' assembly. So it's like a jury service type thing. People are selected randomly, so the whole cross-section of society is represented. And those people get to make the decisions about what's the appropriate mix of solutions around changing the way we live, what sacrifices are worth it, what's priority, but all aimed at achieving carbon neutrality as soon as possible. But not necessarily saying that the Prime Minister gets to decide, or the Cabinet gets to decide, or Extinction Rebellion members get to decide. But we as a society, a cross-section of our society, get to decide how we achieve this by taking evidence from experts, like in an expert witness sort of thing in a jury.
Well, I had this idea of, I was thinking about it last night, I was thinking about that idiot in Brazil that's on about just, destroying the Amazon rainforest. And I was thinking, why can't the UN get involved? There's all these clever people sat around, talking about the most important, problems and solutions in the world. And, we've been told many times that if you lose the Amazon, you're losing like a good resource.
A planetary resource.
Why can't they, like America, like they pay their taxes for NASA, for example, a chunk of their tax goes to NASA. Why can't everybody in the world that pays taxes, a small portion go towards like almost something like NASA, but for climate change? Some of the biggest scientists in the world, some of the most, economical, brilliant people, just one big company that can go around and be like, okay, so we don't need to do this. We can take a little bit of this out. You guys over there, you can't destroy the rainforest to stop it. Or, why can't they do that?
So we do have the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, but that's scientific evidence. It's advisory. They don't have decision-making or policy-making capacity. So I guess what you're talking about is the IPCC.
I've read about them, and didn't Trump say that they're not viable or something like that? There was something there where he was like, we're not going to listen to them, we're just going to carry on.
They are the gold standard internationally for scientific evidence. I mean, he will undermine anything that anybody says if it's not in his interest. I think we just need to sideline that kind of attitude and see it for what it is.
He's a businessman, and like you said, money seems to be the driving force for everything in the world at the moment, regardless of how many people die. And regardless of how many people...
the costs of adapting to the kind of climate change we're looking at, if we don't do something about it soon, the costs are going to be astronomical of trying to make life livable on the planet that's too warm, where this level of destruction's going on regularly, where, regular heat waves are something that over 1 billion people experience. The kind of crop failures from too much water or not enough water, we're not just going to carry on as we are. No. People seem to think that we can just stay at status quo. We can't. Status quo is changing, and we have to make sure it changes in a positive direction, not the catastrophic direction that it's heading in at the moment. Yeah,
we've seen some crazy things happening, like you said, with the weather. Like with that dam that just is about to collapse.
In Derbyshire, In
Derbyshire. That was crazy. I read about that. And what's happened with it? Do you know what's happened with that dam? Well, I don't understand how that illustrates climate change. I don't understand. Is it because the water swelled a bit more? I don't know.
There was a massive rainfall in a short amount of time. And the dam couldn't cope, basically. So when global temperatures, global average temperatures increase, you just get increased instability of weather. So you get more extreme events more often. So you get rather than having pitter-patter rainfall averaged over the year like we're used to, you're going to get extreme amounts of rainfall in short amounts of time and then none for ages. And that's when things like dams burst and then you get droughts. And
it's also underinvestment in infrastructure. So it's a kind of 200-year-old dam, and it was built in a very different situation. So Darwin was born 210 years ago, and the human population at that time was just 1 billion. So it's now 7.7 billion. CO2 concentration in the atmosphere when Darwin was born was 284 parts per million. Today they're 410 parts per million. So that's a 44.5% increase in just 210 years since Darwin was born. Wow. 2 miles down the road. And although that doesn't sound very much, parts per million, you can imagine a glass of clear water, and if you were to drop a single drop of milk into that water, that would then give rise to that water not being clear anymore. And that's the impact and the effect that CO2 has in our atmosphere to heat, essentially. So the sunlight enters the earth and then can't escape through this milky CO2-rich atmosphere, and that's what's happening.
And I saw something a while ago that was it China? They were installing these huge, I don't know if they're like almost like dehumidifier or air filters or something on top of their skyscrapers, because I like China's.
This was for air pollution.
Because obviously China's crazy bad for smog, isn't it? You know, they wear the masks and they struggle to breathe. Asthma's crazy over there, and people really struggling. And so, why can't we do that? Why can't we just install? I know these are simple questions I'm asking because I just don't understand. And this is the problem. I think this is the same with it. Like people that don't understand things, like Extinction Rebellion, like climate change, like Brexit, for example, they just tend to ask silly questions and get a little bit, So why can't we just install air filters everywhere and it makes things better?
I think they're called trees.
Trees.
And they'll help bring the temperature down long term as well if we plant enough of them. So it's a bit of a prevention as well as a cure.
How is this guy in Brazil getting away with chopping down all this rainforest? I don't understand how he's getting away with it.
He was voted in.
Yeah. But that has that's not a Brazil problem. That's a whole Earth problem,
Totally. Yeah, there's a moral dimension and an international global responsibility there as well that's being failed.
But I think in Ethiopia, haven't they just planted a record number of trees? No. So there's lots of really, really hopeful parts of the world that are doing amazing things as well.
I think and that's partly what Extinction Rebellion are about. It's yes, we want people to be to update themselves on the science and what's actually going on and where we're projected, what the trajectory is of where we're going. So there are lots of reasons to be fearful, but then there are also, if we all act now, if people really come together and across the planet, but going back to your point about, what's the point in doing something in the UK if we need a global solution? Yes, but our influence is on our government. We need our government to make changes and our government to work with other governments.
I totally agree. Absolutely agree. Like we were talking, your mic has slipped right down.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It's my...
So to turn it around to so that we've got plenty of reasons to be cheerful and not just focusing on the reasons to be fearful, which is where we are at the moment. But that's really about getting people to wake up and realise what the situation is.
And it goes back to what I was saying about when people just don't understand. When they don't understand, it's like, oh, those Extinction Rebellions. It's like back in I always say about Nam, like when people come out of Nam and the hippies go, let's go to peace, no war, and that sort of stuff. It was always the government and the people that know what they're talking about versus the hippies. And I can sense a bit of that now. Like I watched an interview yesterday with Sky News, and there was one of your guys, Claire, that was being interviewed with another guy. I've written down like bullet points while I was trying to look after my little boy yesterday. But like the way the interview started was very much like an ambush. First of all, the presenter on Sky News, she got the girl, she introduced her as Claire, but then got her name wrong. That was like very much, it sounded like a dig to try and belittle her a little.
Undermining.
Yeah. And then the whole interview was just dragging up points that she hadn't even made about other people, about other groups, and it was just like an attack at this girl. And she, to be fair, she was really impressive in how she stood her ground.
Yeah, I've seen her in other interviews. She's good, isn't she? She's quite clear about her.
that for me is an example of people just don't understand where this girl's coming from. Understand where you guys are coming from. So instead of, okay, let's hear these guys out. Let's just be really hostile towards them.
And I felt actually, if you really listen to the content of what she was saying and what he was saying, there wasn't a million miles between their positions, but it was the manner was set up to create this conflict between them to say you're saying one thing and you're saying another. Actually, on most things, they were very closely overlapping. They were talking about the population element to the climate crisis and whether or not rich people should be not having babies. I think there was some news.
Harry and Meghan Markle heard that they've had one baby and they were like, are you going to have any more? And I think Harry said something along the lines of, I'm not going to have any more because of the effect we'd have on the climate, or
And it was a debate about whether or not that's something that people should be doing. I mean, so they raised the issue about the birth strike movement, and actually, I think they slightly missed the point there. And Claire tried to correct them and sort of clarify that the birth strike movement is about people who feel that it's not responsible to bring children into the world at the moment, given the trajectory that we're on as a planet.
Yeah.
It's not so much about telling people you shouldn't have children because it's irresponsible to the climate. Because actually, it's not, people aren't born emitting carbon. It's the choices that they make. It's the things that they do that are causing the problem.
Yeah.
So there are people in other parts of the world who might have large families, but their overall carbon footprint is a fraction of a typical Westerner. So we can make choices about the carbon we emit. So it's not just about not having more people on the planet. It's about what those people on the planet do, and that's why we need these big infrastructure changes that only government policy can enact, about changing the way that we travel, the way that our homes are heated, the way that we build, these sort of major infrastructure things that, yes, we can make choices and we can decide to have a lower carbon diet, eat less meat and dairy and make personal choices that reduce our carbon footprint. But we can't. Those small changes. We're way past the point that we can make the size of change that we need with those sorts of changes. We need big scale infrastructure changes, and then if our individual carbon footprints, because we've got a world, if we're living in a world that enables people to live sustainably, then crack on and have kids, because it's not the actual person. It's what they do. It's how they consume.
It's not about going, you should only have one child because otherwise your carbon footprint's going to be bigger. It's more about, I can't bring a child up in this world right now.
I think the birth strike movement is more about the latter, that it's irresponsible to bring a child into a planet that's going to be so catastrophic to live on in the next 20, 30. I mean, at the rate we're going, we're talking about tipping over 1.5 degrees, which is when the consequences of climate change will start to get more catastrophic. We're looking at tipping over that threshold, if we don't do something about it rapidly, in around 2030. And that's before my children leave home. I've got infant school age children. So we're not talking in a couple of 100 years. We're talking about our children's generation.
Our lifetime.
And our grandchildren.
And we've already delivered the 1 degree. So the 1.5 degree limit, we've only got a third of that left. So we've only got a half a degree to go, essentially, which is crazy. And I mean, it's really interesting to see the way the public have come around plastic and plastic bags,
especially Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury's brilliant. Like, there's so many carbon-free shops and things. It's brilliant.
People are motivated, but I think that they're sort of being sold the wrong solutions at the moment. They're being told if you buy something different, if you consume differently, but actually it's partly a bit about buying less, but also about stuff that not just buying something that's made out of something different, but just consuming less, throwing less away, reusing, repairing.
And the harmful things that people buy as well, you don't need to buy all that makeup, love. You don't know where that's come from, because there's all the palm oil and things that's used a lot in
food
and
creams.
So that brings us on to biodiversity, actually, which we've not touched on yet. Palm oil is destroying parts of the world.
Should we explain to our listeners what palm oil is? Because some people probably wouldn't understand it.
It's a vegetable oil from palm trees.
Palm trees. Yeah. And this is why they're knocking down.
It's cheap,
rainforests.
And it's easy, and it's a cash crop, and
which is why the guy from Brazil at the moment is on about let's just cash in on knocking down all these trees and selling palm oil to the rest of the world. What can we do to kind of move away from palm oil? What can we use instead of, everything that's made with palm oil? Is there anything that you could suggest? Or is it just a case of like taking the something, reading the label and going, there's palm oil in that, I'm not going to buy that,
Yeah, so consumers do have power. So there is, you can just choose not to buy things that have got ingredients in that you think are harmful. But again, I think we're talking at the level of individual lifestyle choices, consumption choices, and they can make a difference, but they can only make such a small difference. We're beyond that point.
We need someone to say, right, we're not.
It's illegal to put palm oil in this drink. You can't use this type of packaging. Manufacturers can only use packaging that can have a complete full cycle.
And I've seen some big companies, that'll go like plastic free. There's a few companies that are jumping onto it now,
which is great, but it depends what else they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not just
they've got to make their money somewhere else, and where are they going to be doing that? Yeah.
So not just having the sort of gimmick and everyone uncritically going, they're great, that's great, they're plastic free, but thinking about, well, what are they doing instead? What other resource are you using? Has that got a bigger carbon footprint? What's the life cycle of that material? Can it be recycled? Yeah. Can it break down? So just being really responsible about the way we use resources. And like you say, part of that needs to come from government and say, there are 5 types of plastics that you can use and they can all be recycled. And if you want to put packaging, if you want to package your product in something, then it has to be one of these. So it's those sorts of levels of change. But I think consumers making it clear that they support this, that they don't want that unsustainable stuff anymore. They don't want products that are destroying biodiversity by ripping down parts of the rainforest. That's a way of us communicating that we're behind this, and that politicians that aren't really moving on this are going to get voted out. I think that's one of our biggest power. Partly we don't buy products from the companies that we don't like their ethics and we don't think they're being responsible towards our planet, and we vote out any politician that isn't making this a serious priority.
And I think people get distracted, don't they? There's a lot of I was quite concerned about doing this interview, mainly because it's quite politically charged. But you know what? That's not what we should be thinking about. We shouldn't be thinking about Boris versus Corbyn and right versus left. Let's think about what's right and what's sensible. What does this...
and more long term as well. We've been distracted by the short term things around Brexit and that's only the last couple of years, but we've been distracted by all the various political things that have gone on. I don't know, the Iraq War, over the last sort of couple of decades. They're all individually important and serious issues, but they are still small and short-term issues. How livable our planet is, and the kind of destruction that we're talking about. We're going to see, so immigration is something that's talked about a lot in the press, and that's a sort of short-term political point-scoring issue. We're going to see migration on a scale previously unimagined because of climate change. If we don't make radical action fast, we're probably going to see massive migration anyway, but the longer we leave it, the worse it gets, the more people are going to migrate. So, we're really storing up massive problems for the long term by being distracted by all these smaller problems in the short term.
Just imagine all those people from Norfolk coming and living in Shrewsbury. It's going to be terrible.
Oh dear, not Norfolk. And this is where my idea of the United Nations NASA type, what's it,
IPCC with teeth is sort of
the IPCC with teeth. I like that. So they can come into play, so they can look at infrastructure and how things can change in the country where they're really struggling because of climate change. And that will stop migration, right? They'll be more comfortable.
Make people's homes livable.
Yeah. And I think to see the way the Netherlands have approached this with the Delta project, so they invest billions and billions a year looking at how their country, which is largely below sea level, responds to rising sea levels and changes in climate. And this is done with massive public support, because I think people really understand this issue. After the 1950s, they lost, hundreds and hundreds of people in a massive flood, which also affected the east coast of the UK, 1950s time. And it's the way they're doing it is brilliant. The way Norway is approaching electric vehicles, there's just a dramatic and radical transformation of transport infrastructure, charging points across Norway. The way Germany is approaching the refurbishment of existing houses with really low-cost loans, fabulous professional support for people to kind of make the changes that they need to. And it strains the kind of cultural way different countries approach this, and there's something about the UK that's a bit funny, I think, in terms of the way we don't like change, or we're
we like our traditions and we like things to stay the
Yeah,
same.
yeah. Small C conservative, even with a non-conservative government, we things tend to move quite slowly and
I mean,
carefully.
I was in Belgium a couple of years ago, and I was blown away by their infrastructure. You know, it's how efficient it was and how smoothly things ran, and I was just kind of like, why can't we do that here? I know there's not as, I don't know, Belgium, it's quite a high populated country compared to the UK, but still, you know, we can still make the changes like Scandinavia, like you're saying, like they've got this amazing way of life. Why? What are they doing different? Can we not look into that and slowly start incorporating things like that into our country?
Yeah.
You know?
Not that slowly though.
No, not that slowly. Well, they need to.
Yeah.
Well, they at least need to start, don't they? They need because, like, let's take it back to like what we were saying about like the birth strike sort of thing, like, you know, because there was a way I wanted to illustrate it, bring it down to like Alex terms, because I want to explain to people like when we look at Wall-E, for example, that movie. I love that as an example of things.
Yeah, I always put that on when we're having Extinction Rebellion meetings at our house. I entertain my kids with Wall-E in the background because I feel like it's...
That scene, those first scenes where you got Wall-E running around this absolutely devastated planet, which is Earth, obviously, and then he goes up to the ship where the ship are, and these fat people floating around on the beds that float around, and they get food service and all sorts. Those people would have been like 0.0001% of the population. The rest of the population would have died.
Yeah. A lot of skeletons in amongst all that rubbish as well, wouldn't there?
Yeah, so that is the devastating thing about Wall-E. So when people are saying, I'm not going to have kids because I can't have them live, that's what they don't want to happen. They don't want their kids to have to live through that. But we can make the change to do it, right?
Yeah, we can.
It's not all doom and gloom, is it?
No, but also I think it's a proper and true test of humanity, because even though climate change impacts are getting worse, it's still, the biggest impact is going to be in 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time, but the action needs to be taken now.
Yes.
So there's this separation, and it's a true test of the politics and how
it is a bit
we
abstract,
can approach
you know. It's not, you know, we're starting to see, we are starting to see climate crisis already. But yeah, it's just that this is the tip of the iceberg, as it were. You know,
they're talking about Greenland now. Greenland's melting.
Melting, yeah, and that's a 7-meter rise in sea levels if Greenland melts, because it's above water level, unlike other sea ice. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. You know,
I think it's starting to shift. People are starting to see it. The news are starting to report it in a responsible manner, which is in, like, you know, actually giving a sense of the scale of this as a real priority and a global disaster. And you say it's not all doom and gloom. I think people need to get their heads around the fact that it could very seriously
absolutely.
and realistically and imminently be serious doom and gloom if we don't do something. So it's about catalysing people to action and joining an organisation like ours to amplify their voice, to pressure the government to act.
I think the best way to put that is it's either doom or gloom. It's up to you. Like, that's the best way to do it, because, you know, it's only if we start acting now. And I don't have any faith. And I try to be as honest as I can. I mean, I'm not owned by Rupert Murdoch. I can see what the hell I like, but I just don't think, I can't see the big countries like America, UK, China, things like that, just being going, okay, we'll just change, because it's just not going to happen.
China are actually on course.
Oh, actually, no, take that back. We were just talking earlier in the podcast about the changes China are making. So yeah.
I mean, and it's partly because the issue that they face is an immediate kind of acute issue of air pollution, and they see that, and they are changing their transport, you know, in terms of the electric vehicle growth rates.
India as well. India, we've seen a lot about India.
Yeah. And it's almost those countries that suffer with pollution in a way, and because we don't so much in this country, that it is more of a kind of chronic problem that's coming, and we don't see it in quite the same way. Or a problem that's happening
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've seen going on in the UK that has been encouraging? Is there anything that you know, picking good things out of the bad things, is there any changes that we've made that are encouraging?
Yeah, I think the Committee on Climate Change, so that was established, so, you know, with responsibility for reducing. So that was, I think, Ed Miliband that put that in place, sort of, you know, mid-2000s, and they set a series of carbon budgets, of which we have met the first few. I think we're increasingly struggling now to meet the later carbon budgets through to kind of 2030. So I think we need a lot more legislation, a lot more policy changes to enable that, because we've seen onshore wind dramatically fall off, with government not really allowing that in quite the same way it did a few years ago. The subsidies for things like photovoltaics, solar energy have now disappeared, so that's fallen significantly. The government's intention to have carbon neutral new homes was scrapped. That was supposed to be in place in 2016. So there's, and then the refurbishment of existing homes, which I'm really passionate about, the 20 odd million homes we have. There was something called the Green Deal, which you may remember a few years ago, which they lost its way and was a bit complicated and expensive.
They were going around insulating everybody's houses, weren't they? And stuff.
Absolutely, and that was supposed to pay for itself out of the savings you made over the next 20 years. So
a
really neat idea, and Germany has something very similar, but it works really well over there.
But then we tweaked the deal, and it didn't actually quite pay for itself.
And interest rates were too high. It was 7-8% interest rates for the loan and stuff, and that collapsed. And so there's lots of things that we haven't quite followed through on.
I think you can't ask individual consumers to take a huge short-term hit if there's, it needs to be beneficial in the short term as well. So changing to a greener energy supplier needs to be, have some advantage that overall. They're going to, have better insulation so that they save a bit of money, as well as knowing that they're contributing. But the way I see it is that it's like an oil tanker. It's a massive, huge thing that we need to turn around, and that's going to, in order to turn it in the opposite direction, is going to be an almighty feat. And we're not quite turning it in the other direction yet, but we are putting the brakes on. So the government have acknowledged there's a climate crisis. Our local authorities, so Shropshire County Council, have declared a climate emergency. So our town council, local authorities across the UK are recognising the scale of the crisis.
It's crazy that
now we need the serious action that actually delivers on doing something about that.
It's crazy that, it's great that counties can do that, but we don't need that. We need the UK government to go climate emergency.
Well, they have acknowledged that there is one.
And
what are they doing about
net zero target? So
and they've set a net zero target, but it's at 2050, which
nation in the world to have done that. So that there are.
It's progress, but it's small progress, and we need big progress, and we need faster progress.
Yeah. So it's like, thanks for listening to us, but let's hurry things up, guys. Let's talk about Extinction Rebellion a little bit, because you guys are. How long has Extinction Rebellion kind of been going?
Late last year, so
so
9
fresh.
10 months.
The first big action was last October, I want to say, in London, where they blocked some bridges. That was autumn.
Crazy. So everybody was talking about that,
it's come a long way in less than a year.
And you're saying you've got branches like all around the world now, because of all this. And how has the feedback been? Are you slowly growing in numbers? Or are you quickly growing in numbers?
Quickly growing in numbers, yeah. So after each of these big eye-catching events, we have a massive surge of membership, we've noticed. So particularly after the London Rebellion, we went from having, about 100-ish members of sort of local people, probably who'd been involved in the climate and environmental movement for a long time in, Friends of the Earth and various local green organisations. So those were the people that sort of kicked off Shrewsbury XR. But then it started becoming, after the London Rebellion, much more mainstream. We're getting people, lots of people who've not been previously involved, and a lot of young people. Yeah. So, it shot up to about 700 members.
I was walking around, where was I? I was in Cork, yeah. It was in Cork, I saw it, and there was an XR spray painted on the wall. I was like, I'm speaking to them.
Great, yeah.
That's something in Cork there. So you're growing in numbers, you're getting people to sort of listen to you. What can we do to kind of speed things up a bit? Let's create an XR kind of army. Let's push things forward. Just carry on doing what you're doing. Have you got things planned to try and raise awareness?
Yeah, there's stuff planned. So we have an Earth Strike 20th of September. So
what's that? What's an earth strike?
So we're supporting another group whose idea this is. So people are going to go on strike from their jobs.
So the
school strike.
The school children have been
I've seen a lot of that as well.
on Fridays for a while. They're asking the adults to join in basically and show their support and actually have some economic impact to the strike. So they're on the Friday the 20th of September, the school strikers who strike on a Friday are asking grown-ups to go on strike from their jobs. To show serious commitment to this issue, create some economic impact, get the government to pay a bit more attention. Because like you say, that's the level, it's the government that we need to start changing the policies to make this oil tanker turn around.
Is there any sort of fresh ideas that you got? I mean, this is great. Strikes and protests, it's things that people do quite commonly, but is there some? I mean, say quite commonly, they have an amazing effect, obviously, because Extinction Rebellion are here in my kitchen. But is there anything fresh, anything new? I mean, to come up with something new and original would be, it's quite hard, isn't it? But is there something you guys got planned that you think might be quite groundbreaking? I don't know. It's a difficult question.
Well, I mean, there was the Heathrow drones thing, which has now been abandoned. There was a lot of tension within XR over that. So I don't know if you've heard that in the media recently. So that was planned. That has been decided that it was too radical and that's not going to go ahead. There's also the next nationwide rebellion on the 7th of October. So that's a 12-day.
So this is what's different about XR is these extended periods of non-violent civil disobedience, sort of focused on the capital. So actually having economic impact on our capital by blocking the roads, blocking the bridges, and that's what happened in April, and the same is planned again for October, and not just for one day, because that's what's been done in the past, and that and people pay attention and go, oh yeah, and then they forget about it and go about their everyday business. But when you do it day after day after day, then there starts to be like serious media attention and businesses saying this is affecting us. Government, can you do something about this? So it actually, those prolonged periods, there were people literally camped at Marble Arch, for 2 weeks, and we're planning that again. To have a major impact to really get the government to go the next level. So we think we made a big impact in April by getting the climate emergency declared by Parliament.
Yeah, now you just need to kick their butts.
And now we've just got to keep going because that isn't enough. That's the very beginning.
Yeah.
But
1,000 people were arrested and they're going through the courts. So I think all of those are going to be.
So mass civil disobedience, amongst ordinary people like us who've got jobs and kids, and and are worried about the future. Just ordinary people participating in mass civil disobedience, blocking roads, going on strike from work. That is XR's sort of radical tactic, if you like. That's what's different about us from previous.
It is quite radical. It's weird because I would like to show my support for Extinction Rebellion, but I couldn't go on strike because my job is very important to me. I've got, and I bet there's lots of people that do that.
There's lots of people who are in jobs that are too precarious to do that, or for whatever reason they feel it's not appropriate for them to go on strike or to get arrested. So, I'm a member of Extinction Rebellion, but I don't plan to do something that it gets me arrested. It's not that you can only be involved if you're willing to make that level of commitment. There's all sorts of different things that need to be done behind the scenes, and actions that don't involve getting arrested. You can do these roadblocks, but you can move off when the police ask you to move. So that's what people get arrested for, is if the police ask you to move from a roadblock and then you refuse, then they give you a warning and you can choose to stay, and then you might get arrested if you don't do anything. If you choose,
it's all about getting your banners out there, isn't it? It's all about letting people know why you do it.
Yeah, we can. If 100,000 people turn up to these roadblocks. Maybe a few thousand of them will be arrested, but they will be the people who choose to be arrested. That's their. They've decided that's appropriate.
It's
tactic
not violent,
for them,
is it? It's you just standing there, blocking the way.
It's non-violent, and Extinction Rebellion have this ambition of trying to get 3.5% of the population mobilised to then create this system change. So that's the magic number.
Can you trust that many people to do things peacefully, though? I mean, realistically,
so far I think it's been amazing.
And it's a really interesting organisation to be part of. It's not like any organisation I've been in before. It's very supportive. There's a lot of focus on looking after people and on regeneration, and on reflecting on learning from our actions and then building on them, but looking after each other. It's quite, there's a lot of focus on that, but also on during the actions, feeding people, communicating with the public to make sure that people understand what we're doing and apologising. You know, we realise we're holding up your day. We realise this is going to have consequences for you, but we think a bigger negative is coming down the road if we don't do something now. So it's about the proportionality of the impact. Yes, you're stuck in a traffic jam now, or you might not be able to get to
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Rogers, you're going to be 20 minutes late for work, but the earth is going to end. Like, the world is going to end. So, you know, I get it. I mean, I really love what you guys are doing, because I would like to see some changes made too. Everybody does. You know, it's just about how can we what's the best way to do it without, you know, putting your own sort of life in jeopardy? It sounds daft. It sounds like a really extreme, but like if I didn't go to work because I was on strike, I'd lose my job. I'd lose my house.
Yeah. No, you're right. People have got to, you know, and I've got the same. I've got young children. There's a tension between looking after their short-term needs, which is they need me to have a job and to you know, to not be in prison, like that.
So what ways people...
But they also need a planet to live on in the future. So so I've got to sort of balance my responsibility towards them in the future as well as my responsibility towards them in the short term. So I'm doing all the non-violent direct action that doesn't involve getting arrested. I'm looking into what might be the consequences if I go on strike. But there's all sorts of ways that people can show solidarity.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, that's great.
Ways that people can show solidarity with the strike if they choose, if they think it's not appropriate for them, or, you know, their job would be at risk, or in some way, you know, it's too big a risk for them. So suggestions like going outside and standing on strike for say 11 minutes at 11 o'clock, because the IPCC have told us we've got 11 years left to make serious changes to keep the global warming under 1.5 degrees, which is this sort of critical tipping point where things will get a lot worse if we go above that. Yeah. So, you know, or wearing green badges, or maybe on that day writing to their chief exec or writing to their MP, or those, you know, taking some time out of that day to do something. So there's lots of different ways that people can be involved, even if they, like you say, feel that the personal risk would be too great.
It's trying to find a way as well to burst people's bubble. People live inside their own little bubbles. You know, they're kind of like, I've got a nice house, I've got a nice car, I've got a good job. You know, I've got a season ticket at United or whatever. You know, people are just wrapped up in their own little world, which is acceptable. It's fine, but it's like, well, actually, you know what? Your 3-litre Jaguar is actually a bit too much. You know, so it's trying to reach those people, isn't it? You know, and it's good that you've got you guys that are organising these great events, and you've got people that can speak on behalf of you guys in such an eloquent way, because you got what's her name?
Greta Thunberg.
The lady from the
Claire Farrell.
Yeah. And how many people have you got on there that you could quite happily go, here's the news team, talk? How many people? You got quite a good team of people behind you?
So Claire Farrell is from the national XR team. So the way XR works is it's what's called holacratic, which it's a word I'd not come across until I joined XR. And basically it means that each individual organisation locally is kind of self-organising. There's no hierarchy as such. We do our own thing as long as it's in keeping with the XR's 3 demands and the ethos of XR and the non-violence in particular. You crack on and do your own thing. So there is no hierarchy. We're not led by the national team. So just a slight side angle on that. There was an interview on Radio 4 the other day with somebody that was saying that they were trying to undermine XR and saying that we were being the members were being duped, and that it was anarchism with a smile, and that the leaders of XR, as they kept referring to them, were trying to bring about this basically a sort of a revolution and a change in the political system. It's another
one of those goddamn hippie kind of things, isn't it?
It was quite alarmist, but it's completely not true. And one of the counter arguments to that is that we're not led by the national team. Everyone in XR is sort of autonomous, and we do our own thing. We're not being told what to do. We're not following orders. We attend events if we want to. We're responsible for ourselves, and we organise our own things. So anyway, so Claire Farrell is in London XR, and she's very good. I've seen her on national TV a couple of times. She seems excellent. Locally, we've got a handful of people who are kind of confident to speak to the media. Yeah. We've got a lot of expertise locally. Maybe not everyone's that confident about talking in an interview, but we've got a huge amount of expertise within our of people who've been involved in the environmental movement for decades, and know about the history of what different things have been tried and what's worked and what's not worked particularly.
Economically, you'd need to have the mind of Alan Turing to be able to, or someone that brilliant to be able to work out, like, okay, so say we get rid of Shell. Yeah, there's no more, or BP or anything like that. Let's get rid of them. What happens then to the economy? It's one of those things. It's a huge problem, isn't it? How do you solve a problem like that? And I think that is the biggest issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I don't think there's one solution.
Yeah,
there's not one solution, and I think we cited earlier. If we have Norway's transport policy and Germany's refurb policy, and you can see examples from all around the world of amazing ways in which society is solving this problem.
Which is why I asked, like, who have you got that's intelligent enough to try and...
it is this, going back to Anna's point, this citizens' assembly, this idea of
taking expert evidence.
Taking expert evidence.
And a cross-section of society deciding. We're not saying that we know the answers and that it should be up to us. Yeah. So that's another counter-argument to this idea that we're anarchism with a smile, is that we're not suggesting... overthrowing the government. We're suggesting a citizens' assembly where a cross-section of society gets consulted.
Take your resources from here, stop putting your attention over here and put it over here where it really is really needed. Yeah. That's what you're saying.
And have a truly democratic, like a jury service approach to deciding how we're going to do that. So we're not saying that it's up to us.
Okay.
We're just saying that we want the question to be asked of the people.
How can the people of Shrewsbury help you guys?
Well, get involved. Yeah. We have a website, so xrshrewsbury.org. You can go there to find out what's going on locally, and then also the National Extinction Rebellion website is, beautiful. It says, talks about the principles and why this is happening. So have a look there. We also have an email address, xr.shrewsbury@gmail.com.
Yeah. We have an active Facebook group, so we've got a public Facebook page where we share lots of information, but we've also got a closed group of coming up for 800 members now. So if people are interested, and if they're on Facebook, then to join that. Of course, lots of people don't use Facebook, so there were other ways to contact us. As Richard said, the website and email. We, as of September, we're starting a regular monthly meeting that's going to be at Unison, which is a building just behind Shire Hall, and it's going to be the first Tuesday of the month in the evening. That will be our regular public meeting, so anyone who wants to get involved, come along to that. I'll just say that, personal changes do count. Things that you can do to lower your carbon footprint are important and worth doing. But actually, what's really going to make the big changes is if people who care about this add their voices to other voices to amplify. If we can to collectively demand that our government makes the big scale changes that we as individuals can't make. We can't change our transport infrastructure by buying something slightly different or deciding not to eat so much meat or dairy. We can't change the way that our businesses are heated or what pollution is created.
Or stop somebody from destroying the Amazon rainforest. We can't do that.
Yeah, but what we can do is join together and amplify our voices and do things like non-violent civil disobedience that pressure our government into making the kind of scale and rapid action that we need.
And looking for about 2 million people across the UK to be actively involved with XR would be enough to create that system change.
Yeah. Do you think they do enough in schools about this? Educating children on what is actually going on the planet right now? I mean, it's a hard question because you're not at school yourself. So you don't see that, but
I think there's a lot going on.
It's improving. I think it's like everything in this movement. It's improving. Yeah. Probably needs more and faster. But
the wonderful Greta, is engaging young people and showing what's possible. As a young person herself, in terms of the way she's talking about this issue and what she's doing, I think is wonderful. So I think the kids can teach us a lot.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that's one of the one of the solutions, isn't it, is to get to the youth. Not get to the youth. That sounds really bad. Let's get them. Let's get to them. Yeah, before they can need
Yeah, it's more about it's
educating them
and enabling them to do what they find their own solutions. It's not about us deciding for them.
We haven't been able to do anything, have we? As much as we've tried.
Well,
Yeah, and I was down in London, and there was a bunch of the youth group down there talking to Daniel Kawczynski. He came out of Parliament. And pretty much every parliamentary constituency had people there being represented, and the young people were just brilliant to see engaging, even some as young as 11 and 12, talking confidently about the issues. I think that's really powerful in terms of the impact that can have on our politicians.
Yeah.
And somebody came up with a suggestion on our Facebook group yesterday that actually maybe that's the level we should be pitching this at, is engaging our politicians' children. If our politicians are failing to act for us, we write an open letter to Boris Johnson's children. I realise there's some controversy over how many there are, but you write to the cabinet's children in an open public letter and say, look, this is what needs to happen. This is what your future is going to look like. Your parents have the responsibility for making these changes that can change your future. So educate, putting pressure at that level as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's anything we can do to help, there's only so much I can do with the biscuit, obviously. But I like to give you guys a voice, something to, a way to say what you wanted to say. This thing at Barclays that you did was fantastic, and I read that Barclays, big banks are responsible for investing in really bad products and things. So it was good to give you that opportunity. Is there anything else that you guys would like to communicate to people?
I just want to say a little bit about the Shropshire angle, because obviously Shropshire being the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, we feel that we've got a sort of unique place in this issue. Not that the global warming is Shropshire's fault, but it started with an acceleration of emissions that began with that, and we feel that we can be at the forefront of the next industrial revolution, which is a sustainable one.
Yeah.
So and also being the place that Darwin came from, the world's most famous naturalist. So our slogan for our first public event that we had in February, which was to celebrate Darwin's birthday as well as Valentine's Day, was to love your planet, and what would Darwin do? So we want Shropshire Council to recognise that we have a unique place in this, and that we could really be at the forefront of the next.
Very influential. Yeah, you've got like almost a response, not as a responsibility. It's probably the wrong thing to say, but like this is the epicenter for what went bad. Let's make it the epicenter of what.
Absolutely.
What we can do good.
Yeah. So we're in a climate emergency. Things are progressing very fast. Business as usual isn't an option. We need to take this emergency mentality and start sort of acting like we do in times of war. So adopting, an all hands on deck to solve this problem until the situation is secured sort of mentality. Achieving carbon neutrality must be our absolute priority. And we just ask people to join an organisation like XR and amplify your voice. And the reason that I joined XR is because I thought, if I don't do it, who will?
Yeah. When you say all hands on deck, I just don't know. I'm trying to get my head around what people like immediately say. Like I wanted to.
I kind of meant in relation to government policy.
Yeah,
like
kind of.
Every policy needs to have to be tested against the criteria of what will it do in relation to the. So all of the fossil fuels need to stay in the ground. Heathrow third runway policy needs to be cancelled. Any infrastructure projects that make the problem worse need to be cancelled. And every policy,
Relief Road, for example.
Locally, the Northwest Relief Road. Any policy that adds to the current problem and contributes to the culture of emitting and travelling in the way that we do. So every policy needs to be examined against the criteria of whether or not it's adding to the problem or adding to the solution. That's what I meant by all hands on deck. Really.
I'm just running around going, all hands on deck. What do I do? I get.
But everyone having it at the forefront of their mind as being the issue that we need to deal with.
Being aware. That's the most important thing. Being aware and being active with.
Being aware to start being active is what counts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So come to a meeting locally.
Yeah.
They're really friendly. You can come and get a feel for what's going on. Obviously, there's the 20th of September, Friday, for the Earth Strike. Whether you do strike the whole day or just get involved or find out what's going on, and that's being led by the young people. And if you do have young people, maybe you might want to find out what their peers and colleagues are doing on that particular day. And then the nationwide rebellion, 7th of October. Hopefully lots
and next time you get an opportunity to vote, then vote out anybody who's not making this the absolute priority.
Yeah, we didn't get an opportunity to vote this time, did we? It's just like, you get Boris, that's what you get.
Yeah, we might get a chance soon.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, well, guys, it's been really cool talking to you guys. I'd say it's really cool. It's quite scary, actually, in talking about what's going to happen. But
no, thanks very much. We really appreciate you showing interest and helping us to get our message out, because that's what it's about. We are just ordinary Shrewsbury residents. The XR Shrewsbury is made up of teachers and nurses and solicitors and business owners and carers and parents and grandparents and religious people and not religious people, and we are a cross section, and we want people to understand that. Really, we're not. We're not radical. We think radical action is needed, but a lot of us are people who've not been previously involved in this sort of thing. But we're frightened by what's going to happen if we don't do something about it now.
And my message to the people of Shrewsbury, or whoever is going to listen to this as well, is I've got an open mind. Okay, I see things like this, and I'm like, okay, I want to explore this. I want to discover what's going on here, what's really going on. I don't look at something that's different, something I don't understand, and immediately attack it with hate. I don't sit there and go,
or run in the opposite direction and feel frightened by it.
Look at these idiots lying on the bank floor. What's going on here? It's more like, okay, why are they doing this?
So why are ordinary people taking their Saturday afternoon out to do that? Like, what would motivate them to do that?
Yeah, I've got a deposit to make. Move off the floor. I want to explore what's going on because I'm curious. I would like to encourage my listeners to be curious. Don't look at something that's different and automatically get angry about it. Try and discover what is going on. Look in the papers. Look, find out. Get a card off someone. Get a leaflet. Google it. Find out what's going on. Don't automatically think this is a bad thing, because this is a good thing. They're trying to encourage changes to the world that would benefit every single one of us. So this is something we should all kind of be aware of. Yeah.
And I'd encourage your listeners to update themselves, feel a little bit of the fear, and then do something about it.
Yeah, and get rid of that 3-litre Jaguar. It's doing no one anyone a favour.
Drive it once a month, maybe.
Thank you very much for joining me, guys.
Thank you very much.
We're here for you guys whenever you need it to talk about anything.
Cheers, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much, guys. Make sure you give this episode a share. Tell people about us, because without you guys, we wouldn't be anywhere. And the show's going somewhere, and it's because people enjoy what we're doing. So we've got a busy month for you now. I will update you all with that on our Facebook. You can check it out with the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. If you've got anything to add, any comments you'd like to make about this episode or any other episodes, drop me an email, shrewsburybiscuitpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear off you. Thank you very much, guys, and peace out.